Good morning, guys, or good afternoon, whether you're joining me from the present or the future. Welcome back to another FutureFight Vanguard video. My name's Josh Stallworth, and welcome to the Cardfight Empire channel. And we're back for another FutureFight today, continuing on with our Bang Dream set that we've been doing this week. These videos were supposed to go up earlier, but Cardfight area went down at the time that I was supposed to be recording these, so I wasn't able to come back and record again until now. So for those of you who were expecting it early in the week, I'm sorry, but bright side, you guys will be getting 3 videos all at the same time today, probably at like different times staggered throughout the day, but nevertheless 3 videos in one day. Boom, bada boom. So we're going to be talking about the Pastel Pellets deck. So this deck is like kind of interesting. I think it's fun. It's basically if you have a certain number of cards in your soul, and you have to have all different cards in your soul, and they have to all be Pastel Pellets. So the whole deck is Pastel Pellets, of course, but if you have like different card names in your soul, there's like thresholds. So there's if you have 5 or more different ones in your soul, and there's other thresholds that say if you have 8. And so the ones with 8 are obviously the more powerful effects, but the ones with 5 are still pretty good as well. And so this deck is kind of like Royal Paladins. In Standard, offers you the ability to put stuff on your rear guard and have your rear guard swing with a drive check, kind of similar to Gansela and Blaster Blade. It also has the ability to swing at your opponent's entire board, kind of like Exculpate, and then you don't have to, obviously have the caveat that Exculpate has of going back down to grade 2. This card just stays on grade 3 because it actually uses your music order card in order to make that possible. So I wouldn't say it's too hard to get to 8 either, because your order cards can go in the soul, and they do count as different card named Pastel Pellets that you can have in your soul to fulfill the cost. So therefore it's not that hard. But we're going to get right into the deck here today. If you guys haven't already, be sure to subscribe down below. Click the bell button so you don't have to miss a single video going forward. Leave a like on the video if you like it. Comment down below letting me know your thoughts on the deck. And also be sure to share the video with your friends, family, whatever, your dog, if you guys enjoyed the video. Get some more views on the video. Also, if you guys haven't already, be sure to check out my second channel, Let's Plays Animes, in the description below, where I do anime, animation, and video games, as well as the Twitch, where I do combined content for both channels. And lastly, check out the join button for this channel. It is a kind of like a little membership thing if you guys are interested in supporting the channel a little bit further. But with that being said, we're gonna get right into the Pastel Pellets deck today. So boom, we're going to start going over it. So if you guys haven't watched any of the Bang Dream videos that I put out this week, you guys will kind of know that, or you won't know what I'm saying, but if you guys have watched the videos, then you will know that, Bang Dream in general, it follows like a pretty generic pattern. All of the cards, or pretty much all the decks, have like 4 grade 3s or 4 copies of 1 grade 3, and then basically they follow along this path of having 12 grade 2s, 12 grade 1s, and then some amount of the order cards, and you usually run more of whichever order card is the best order card in that deck, or the one that you will use most frequently, so that way you don't have to spend a counterblast off your Vanguard to search it every single time, because you will run out of counterblasts very fast doing that. So with the Pastel Pellets deck, we're starting with our Vanguard, which again, another thing about Bang Dream is they have a card that is their main Vanguard, and they also have grade 1, 2, and 3 versions of that card, and those aren't your actual pieces most of the time. They are just the support pieces to help you get to the main pieces of the deck and fulfill the main conditions of the deck. So starting out with our grade 3 of this deck, we have 4 stacked feelings. Aya Maruyama. So what Aya does is she has 2 Vanguard abilities. The first one is, during your turn, if your soul has 5 or more Pastel Pellet cards with different card names, all your Pastel Pellets on Vanguard and Rearguard get plus 5,000. And then if it has 8 or more, they get plus 10,000 instead of 5. So obviously you want to make that different 8 condition as much fast as possible, because all your units will get plus 10k. That's when you really start smacking your opponent for these really hard, really big numbers. That is really hard for your opponent to deal with. But the 5 is just fine, because it's super duper easy to get to 5. But sometimes it's a little bit of a push to get to 8. So just beware of that. And then the second Vanguard skill is if an order was not placed this turn, you can choose to counterblast 1 during your main phase and search your deck or drop zone for up to 1 Pastel Palette's music order and play it. And then if you searched your deck, shuffle your deck. So this is really, really good. Obviously, most of the Bang Dream Grade 3 main cards have this ability, and that makes your orders as non-factors in the deck. So basically, you can just, no matter what, where they are, if they're in your deck, which means that you haven't used them yet, and if they're in your drop zone, which means that you likely have used them already, or they went to drop zone, or when they went to drop zone from healing it off from damage zone or something like that. So it makes you basically just able to use these orders wherever they are, and that makes it a non-factor as to, like, you don't have to draw the card to activate and stuff like that. So you never have to worry about which, like, you know, your orders going off, because you'll always have access to the 3 different grades of orders that exist within your deck. So moving on to our grade 2s, we have 4 Childish Idol Aya Maruyama. So this is our grade 2 Aya. So our grade 2 Aya says, when placed on Vanguard or Rearguard Circle, you can search your deck for up to 1 Pastel Palette's card, any card you want, put into your soul and shuffle your deck. And then this ability may only be used by a card with the same card name once per turn. So you cannot use more than 1 grade 2 Aya skill a turn, but this is really, really good, and let me tell you why. Not only does it put a Pastel Palette's card in your soul that is any card that you want, which is basically like you can have 7 different cards, Pastel Palettes in your soul, and then you're just missing that one more Pastel Palette that needs to be different. Boom, if you have grade 2 Aya, you can just go find out whichever one you don't have already and shove it in there. Also, if you're on grade 2 and you ride this card and you don't have a grade 3 in your hand, you can actually search the grade 3, and if you don't have a grade 3, you probably have a Chisato in your hand, or you have the order card, which is Yura Ring Dong Dance, which allows you to search a Chisato. So if you have Aya on your Vanguard and you find a Chisato, you can place any Pastel Palette's card from your hand into soul, and then return a card from your soul to hand, which you would be getting the grade 3. So in a way, this is a automatic grade 3 searcher for the fact that you only have 4 grade 3s in the deck, which I find really, really consistent and really good. Moving on to our next grade 2, which is one of our probably most important card in this deck, if not one of the most important. But this is Stoic Idol Chisato Shirasagi. So what Chisato does is she has 2 skills. The first one is a continuous Vanguard ability that says, if your soul has 5 or more Pastel Palettes with different card names, your Vanguard with Aya Maruyama and its card name gets plus 5,000 power. So I know that this doesn't make much sense because it's a Vanguard ability that gives power to a Vanguard ability, but then you would think in your mind, if Chisato's my Vanguard, Aya can't be my Vanguard. Well, this is where the deck's mechanics comes in, because your Ring Dong Dance actually allows you to put a Chisato from deck or drop zone onto your board, and then that circle becomes a Vanguard circle as well. So then she's able to drive check, and then that allows you to also still have an Aya on your Vanguard circle as your real Vanguard. So that makes it really, really good, and it's like Gantelite in that way because of that. The second ability is the ability that I prefer a lot more. It's just very, very good. There's no way for your opponent to counterplay this, and it's just very solid. It's very, very toolboxy as well, which is always good in Vanguard to have very good toolbox effects. But this is the skill that we were talking about before, where if it's on the Vanguard or Rearguard Circle, once per turn you can put a Pastel Palette's card from your hand into soul, and you can return up to 1 card without Chisato in its card name from your soul to your hand. So this is really cool because you have cards that random soul charge like Eve or, and cards like this. So if you random soul charge a trigger off of Eve and you don't need to get any other Pastel Palette out of your soul, boom, it doesn't say that you have to pull a Pastel Palette's, and this is the only card that does not specify that it has to be a Pastel Palette. So you can actually just pull out the triggers out of your soul just for defensive purposes with Chisato, while putting something in to the soul that furthers your goal of having the different card names in the soul. Moving on to our next grade 2, we have 4 Genius Girl Hina Hikawa. So what Hina does is she has a continuous Rearguard and Guardian Circle ability that says if your soul has 5 or more Pastel Palettes with different names, this unit gets plus 5,000 power and plus 5,000 shield. Really, really good card, especially on the Rearguard because of its second ability and its first ability, because you will be able to intercept for 10k. However, if you just need to guard with it from your hand for a free 10k, very, very easy, very, very simple. The second ability is when it attacks on the Rearguard Circle, you can counterblast 1, choose up to 2 Pastel Palettes from your drop zone. You can return 1 of them to your hand and 1 of them into your soul. So you can literally select 2 cards, one that's good for shield value, so you would select like a grade 1 Pastel Pellets card, whether that be, you know, any of the grade 1s that we have, and then select a card that you don't yet have a different copy of in your soul, and then shove it into soul. Really easy, really simple. Gets you a +1, and it gets you, you know, a +1 to your goal of having different cards in your soul. So very good. Moving on to our grade 1s, we have 4 very hard working Aya Maruyama. So this is our grade 1 Aya. So our grade 1 Aya says, when placed on Vanguard or Rearguard Circle, look at the top 7 cards from your deck and reveal up to 1 card with Aya Maruyama and its card name from among them. Put it into your hand, shuffle your deck, and if you put a card, discard a card from your hand. So what this means is that since this card just says search for a card with Aya Maruyama, you can actually just literally search the grade 1, the grade 2, or the grade 3 off of its effect. Clearly in the early game, you probably want to search the grade 3 because you probably don't have a grade 3, but if you do already have a grade 3 and you don't have the grade 2, boom, you can get the grade 2 as well. So this is just a very good on ride, and it discards a card just like every other, you know, card that searches a grade 3. Usually the check top 5, discard 1 if you get a grade 3, and the other clans is now a top 7 for doing the same thing, but a little bit buffed because it doesn't have to just find a grade 3. It can also find your 2s or your 1s that have the same Aya Maruyama name. So very good. Then for our next grade 1, we have 4 Mechanic Drummer Maya Yamato. So what Maya does is she's actually my favorite grade 1 in the deck. Because when she's placed on the Rearguard Circle, you look at the top 3 cards from your deck, and then you put any of the Pastel Palettes from them into your soul. And then you don't have to, but I would suggest always putting all the Pastel Palettes that you find into soul, except maybe if it's Chisato, because Chisato has no way to actually be grabbed from soul. So she just kind of sits in there uselessly unless you just need 1 copy of her in there, but I wouldn't put multiple copies of Chisato in the soul. But then you put the rest of the, like whatever wasn't a Pastel Palette, aka your triggers, go back on the bottom of your deck, and then you can use this skill and then perform a shuffle with any of the search abilities, whether that be Aya Maruyama grade 3, whether that be the grade 2 Aya Maruyama, whether that be your Ring Dong Dance. You have a lot of search abilities in this deck, so you can use this to put it back, or to thin out your deck essentially, while increasing your soul count of different soul cards. And then you can shuffle your deck to ensure that those triggers that went to bottom are not wasted and that you won't see them forever. Then moving on to our last grade 1 from the deck, we have 4 Samurai Heart Eve Wakamiya. So what Eve does is when she's placed on the Rearguard Circle, you can soul charge 1, or rather you have to soul charge 1, so it is a forced soul charge. That's why I said that Chisato is really good, because if you happen to accidentally soul charge a trigger off of her, that you can grab her with you can grab the trigger with Chisato, and it becomes a non-factor, like not a problem. And then the second ability is if your soul has 5 or more Pastel Palettes with different card names, this unit gets intercept and can intercept from the back row. So this is good when you have to place this card in front to make some column numbers and maybe play a grade 1 in the same column or whatever. But otherwise than that, it can intercept from the front row or back row as long as you have 5 different Pastel Palettes in your soul, which, like I've told you guys, is super duper easy, and you're going to see that when I start the games here shortly. Then for our zeros, we have 1 Dreamstart Aya Maruyama. Obvious, it counts as a different Pastel Palette in soul, so you need this starter to be your starter. Definitely don't do that thing where you like look at all the starters and then you're like, oh, I think this starter's cute, so I'm gonna run this starter over the actual Maruyama starter. Don't do that. You need Aya Maruyama to give you as much advantage as possible. Not only you drawing a card off of the skill like regular starters, but then it also sits in your soul for the entire game as a soul card that is a Pastel Palette's grade 0. So that's very, very good. Then for our triggers, we ran 7 crit, 5 draw, and 4 heal. Obviously 7 of the glittering memories. That is special to this just because we wanted to run the same theme as the Pastel Palette. So we run the Pastel Palette crit triggers that just have the Pastel Palette art, because keep in mind that none of your triggers are actually any of the archetypes that Bang Dream specifies. They don't have archetypes as the triggers. So this is not Pastel Palette, but it has the Pastel Palette's art. So 7 crit, 4 draw, that is our Sentinel draw, and then 1 Heart Thumping Dream, and then 4 Best Live as our heal trigger. So that is how we built the deck, and then we're going to load up our games here. So we have Pastel Palettes 1. So loading into our first game here, we are playing against Kagero, which appears to be Blade Master. So we put a decent amount of cards back. We actually drew 3 after putting 3 back, so we have a pretty decent hand to start off with. We're actually playing against our friend KO Joe, so shout out to Joe. I think it was his birthday also when he was helping me record this footage, so happy belated birthday to him, and thank him for helping out on his birthday, on his special day, taking the time out of his day to help me out. But he goes for riding the Faja. He checks top 5 and does not get anything, but he does check Lava, or he does go Lava Flow, check top 5 and get the new Soin, and then discard old Blade Master as well, which is, you know, obviously a very solid decision. Then he plays Airmo. He goes to attack us for 21. We no guard. We were also on voice chat, so that's why you guys are not seeing me type anything. But I guard that rear guard attack, and then I go for riding Aya Maruyama. I proceed to search out a Hina and put it into Soul and shuffle my deck. And then I play a Hina on the rear guard circle. So right now you guys can see that I have 3 different Pastel Palettes in the Soul. So I did random Soul Charge 1 with Eve, and it is a Your Ring Dong Dance, so that does count. So now I have a 4 different Soul cards, and then I went for Maya, looking at top 3, and I put the grade 2 Aya in there, which grade 2 Aya is not in my Soul yet, even though it will be after we ride. So now we have 5 different copies of Pastel Palettes. So obviously our skills activate. This gets plus 5,000 power and plus 5,000 shield, and then this can now intercept from the back row. So pretty cool. So then we go for our drive check. We attack 10 to Vanguard. Our Joe no guards. So then we go for 18 to his Vanguard. He takes that as well. And then we attack for 23, and then he takes that as well, and he does get a healing back down to 3 damage. For his turn, he draws, and then he rides the Dragonic Blade Master Soin, which came out in VBT8. Very good card. Obviously, Bang Dream itself is pretty weak against board wipe, but we got pretty lucky here, I think, because he does not have the Doha. So we don't get board wiped immediately, and that is very, very good for us. So he decides to go Force 1 because he was deciding for a little bit there whether he wanted to go Force 1 or 2 because of the scenario that he finds himself in, and he's just trying to create more pressure so that I can, you know, eventually he can topple me and I lose. But he actually puts the Force marker on his Lava Flow Dragon, which is pretty interesting. Then he goes for the discard 2 to call out a Vision token, and since I have rear guards, his Vision token and Vanguard don't get power, unfortunately, and he can't wipe my board because he doesn't have a Doha and a Garon. So pretty unfortunate, but you work with what you have to, I guess, until you can get the job done. So then he plays Frema. He uses the skill of Frema since he has 2 grade 3 units. He Soul Blast 1 and retires all of my rear guards in that column. Then he proceeds to use Air Mode to countercharge and draw, which he draws into another Blade Master Soin. Not really going to help him for defensive purposes, but I can see why he did that. So he attacks for 13. We guard that for a 2 to pass. So he checks no triggers. And then he attacks for 23, which we take, and he unfortunately hits a heal. But we hit a crit on Vanguard, and we take the second attack as well. So then we go for our turn. We ride Aya, grade 3 Aya. We go for Force 1 on our Vanguard circle. And I was kind of reviewing my options here because all the cards have a lot of different effects that work with each other. So it's very important to try to think this turn out as much as I could before I actually make a move. So seems like one of us were thinking here. Either we were thinking or talking, and that's why the recording is not really moving. Okay, so I go for yeah, I was basically thinking about, that's what was happening. So I was thinking about whether or not I wanted to use this rearguard Shisato because I could put cards in hand or cards into my soul. That's different Pastel Palette, but also I would have to grab something that's already in there. And so I like to grab copies, and so since all of these are different, we just went ahead and grabbed the Maya because that's going to help us get to that 8 requirement. So we play Hina, and then we play Maya skill top 3, and then we put a grade 2 Aya into there, and the other 2 go to bottom because they were triggers. Then we counterblast 1 for Aya to search our deck for a music order card. And the music order card that we are searching is actually the grade 1, which is Shuwada and Drea. So this allows us to draw 2 cards and discard 1. So I drew 2 and I discarded the quick shield. Pretty easy access there, and got us a crit and a grade 3, which is pretty good. So all of our units get 5k because of Vanguard Aya having at least 5 different ones in souls. So right now we have 7 different cards in soul. So then we attack for 28, then 28, he no guards. He takes a damage, and then we attack for 33 using Hina skill. Put 2 out, and then 1 goes to drop zone, or sorry, 1 goes to hand and 1 goes to soul. So obviously we did not have a Eve in the soul already, so like I said, Hina's just allowing for these super fancy good plays because it allows you to do your thing. So then our opponent PG'd the rear guard because he didn't want to go to 4 damage, I guess. Then our opponent rides another Blade Master Soin. And this time, he actually does have the Doha and the Garon in his hand. So we'll see how he plays into this. Alright, so he moves his grade 1 back. He goes ahead and calls Doha onto the circle with the force marker. And I think he was still thinking here, and that's why he took it back momentarily. Alright, so he's deciding to go with the Doha play after all. He's counterbossing 1 to replace his Lava Flow Dragon with a Garon because he does want them to boost each other, and then he doesn't really have another place on the board that he can play it. So he discards 2 cards, calls a Vision Token, which is just leaving him with just a Torrid Cannon. And then he wipes my board at the same time. So pretty good skill. And then uses Tor Dragon skill to counterboss 1, put a normal unit on bottom, and yeah, he draws a card. So thankfully he drew a crit. I no guard Vanguard. He does get a crit and then a crit, so he double crits me there. I can't remember if I healed this or not. I did not heal, so that ended up being game 1, which is pretty unfortunate because next turn we were ready to go off definitely with the Kumai Flower, which is what the board attack is. So that would have been cool had we not died there, especially since he drew a crit for turn. You would think that he wouldn't check double crit, but that is Vanguard for you. You can't say much more than that, honestly. It's 2. So game 2, we're playing against Gear Chronicle, specifically Chrono Fang. So we start off with a kind of decent hand. We ride Eve, which is unfortunate but fortunate at the same time. Our opponent attacks for 8. We guard. We ride Chisato, and this is why our hand is kind of terrible because we don't ever really want to ride this card. But we decide to go into Maya and put a couple different cards in Soul, and then we attack for 10, and then we attack for 18, which our opponent takes. Our opponent rides Nabu and attacks our rear guard. We block that just because we want an attacker next turn, not because we really need the Chisato. So we have 5 different Soul right now. And I end up playing the Yura Ring Dung Dance, which allows us to discard a card, search our deck for a Chisato. It comes out on Rearguard Circle, and it becomes Vanguard Circle. So basically both of these are Vanguard Circles now, which means that this can drive check when it attacks. So everything gets its plus 5k from Aya, because we couldn't reach more soul than that. Our opponent no guards the rear guard, and then we attack for 38. Our opponent no guards that as well, which we don't get any triggers, which is unfortunate, but we attack for 28, and our opponent still no guards. So our opponent goes into Chrono Fang. Tiger goes for Force 2, discards 1 to get the Rebellion out of the deck, and then discards 1 for the actual Chrono Fang skill. Gets +1 crit and +1 drive, and then gets the counterboss 1, draw a card, and call it out as rest. Then he calls Chrono Bite Tiger, and then he calls Stroboscope Dragon. So he was thinking, and then starting off here, he swings for 15 just to get rid of our 2 front rows. We take it, So he goes for 3 checks, and he checks nothing. So we get to damage check 3. And thankfully one of those are triggers, so we don't have to get hit by him this turn. And then he rides back down to Chrono Fang. And then we draw for turn, we ride the Eve. We do get another force marker. And so now we have 6 different soul. We go for playing Hina. And it was pretty much like when I looked at this board, I knew what I would have to do, or I knew what I would have to do, and I knew that I would hate it. So we're just doing as much as we can to try to keep that on bay. But that Maya, if you guys couldn't see that, was 3 triggers, so that was unfortunate. But we're using Aya's skill now to get your Ring Dong Dance from the drop zone. We use the skill. Oh, no. So yeah, we discarded the card to get Chisato. Chisato becomes Vanguard Circle. Then all of our rear guards get that plus 5k. So we attack for 33. And then we go for Hina skill to put another one in the soul and add one to hand. And so we actually got a power increase with that because we changed we went from the 7 threshold to the 8 in the middle of that battle. And since Aya Vanguard is still continuous, it did give us more power when we did that. Alright, so we attack for 43. Which our opponent proceeds to no guard with a 15k shield, and then two 10ks. And then our opponent no guards the Vanguard. We check a heal, which does not go off, but then we do check a draw trigger PG. And then we attack with rear guard again, and he cannot block, and he does 6 damage heal, which is unfortunate for us, but it does happen. And then our opponent rides Tiger again, using grade 2 Chronobite to discard a card. Discards Ribble. Ribble skills Soul Blast 1. Call it out, and then a normal unit goes to the bottom and draw. This promo for Gear Chronicle is so good, like so good. Steam Maiden Ribble. Pick up your Ribbles, like they're very good. But then our opponent goes no guard to get Rebellion. Upon turn, discards another Rebellion for the extra effect. I don't know if you know what that is. And then it goes for Ilkabu and Counterboss 1, discards 1 to get an additional drive. So he attacks, and then we lose both of our front row rear guards. Oh yeah, so I was asking him if he did like all his discards right this turn, because by my calculations he would have 0 cards in hand, but he did draw 1 off of the Ribble. So then I realized that while we were talking. Alright, I have no idea what is taking us along. Okay, there we go. So he's attacking the front row, getting plus 10k. Getting that guard restrict as well. So we PG. Our opponent checks it. And 4th. And our opponent attacks for 43. We block it. And then our opponent attacks us for 28, which we got a draw trigger and we drew. So pretty solid. Alright, so we have 8 different soul. I'm telling him that he should return to Fang. Alright, so we go for Maya Scale. Then we counterblasted 1 to get Humai Flowers so that we could attack the entire board. These get their 5Ks. And so we swung all with Humai Flower. He goes for the Hardy and Healthy 48, so that is a 2 to pass. So we check 1, check 2, we give the crit all effects to this Maya over here, and then we attack for 18. And then we attack for 38. And unfortunately for him, he only has exactly enough to guard 38, so he has to take the attack. And that ends up being game 2. Pastel palettes 3 here. And we're going to go at that 5 speed. So for the last game here, we are playing against Ezel, which is, I think this game is a really good showcase on what the deck can do and how, because our Ezel opponent definitely hits the ground running because he goes first, and then he does get the Superior Ride. So he Superior Rides into Grade 3 Ezel, getting that Force 2. And then our opponent plays Wonder Ezel behind Vanguard, and is not Wonder Ezel, Howl. And then plays Hoel in the back row as well. And then attacks our Vanguard for 20. Calling from hand and calling into Listener of Truth Dendrain. He does check a crit and gives the power to Rearguard. So we're taking damage. And we get no triggers. And then he shoves the Howl into the Soul, draws a card, and then is going to play a card, and the card that he chooses to play is Bowmains. And then he discards a Gareth to get a Gareth. And so we block what we can, and we take what we can. And then for Childish Idol Aya Mariyama, I put a card in. And then I call Eve, I random Soul Charge, which our random Soul Charge is a PG. And then we Yura, and we discard to get a Chisato from deck that has Drive Check. And we chose to try to slow down things here, so we attack for Rearguard to 10. And we attack Rearguard, we get to crit, and then we put all the crits over there so that we can, crit our opponent there. So our opponent's hand is actually pretty crappy. Has a Hoel of Bowmains and 2 draw triggers, so I did not even know it was that bad. But our opponent goes for the drive checks and checks nothing. And I also checked nothing, and I was expecting to at least try to check something, but we guard with Maya. And then this Bowman attacks us, and we guard with a crit trigger. For turn, we ride Aya Mariyama. Alright, so I'm thinking about what the play here needs to be. So we end up using Chisato to put a card in and pull out the PG. And then we use our order card to get your Ring Dong Dance. We discard one of our PGs for the Chisato that gets Rearguard. And then we attack for 15 with 1 drive check. We do check a crit, so the crit goes to this Rearguard and the power goes to the other Chisato. So we attack for 33. And Joe PGs, we do get a draw trigger and a heal trigger, taking us back down into 4 damage, and then we attack for like 50 something and he blocks it. He proceeds to draw into Howl. And then this attacks our Vanguard for 14, which we do intercept. This attacks our Vanguard for 16, which we intercept again. And this attacks for 20, which we 2 to pass. And he thinks about it for a second, but then he goes Power Rearguard. And he Counterblast 1, draws a card, and then he has to place a card. So he's placing Kiting, and then he's using Kiting skill. Counterblast 1, Soul Blast 1. And then basically puts the cards back and draws a card because of OL. So then we take one of the rearguard damages and we block this, and we don't have to take this, which is really cool. So we move our Chisato up. We play Yuri Ring Dung Dance. We discard 1 to get a Chisato that has Vanguard Circle. And we go for the gold here. So we attack for 15 to our Vanguard. Attack for 33. And attacked with 28 with a drive check. Alright, so for turn, Joe draws a heal trigger, which is pretty unfortunate for him because he would have 6 damage healed. But he just goes for attack for 12. I throw down a 10k to 2 to pass it, and then I intercept, and I think I intercept here as well. Unless I just guard with a crit because I wanted the Chisato. Yeah, so I wanted the Chisato. I wrote again here. So we have different 6 different cards in Soul. We go for Chisato to get out of Maya, and Maya hopefully gets what we need. So you put 3 cards in. Unfortunately, I think a lot of those were clones, so we don't get a huge amount of anything off of it. But Aya skill allows us to Counterblast 1 and call our Yuri Ring Dung Dance. We Counterblast 1, or we discard a card and we get that, you know, that Chisato. So, attack for 28. And then our opponent takes it, and that ends up being the game for him. But we went ahead and tried to see what we would check anyways if he had blocked or miracle healed or done something crazy of the sort. But with that being that has been the FutureFight Vanguard video for the Bang Dream Pastel Palette set. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, like, comment, and subscribe down below. Check out my second YouTube channel, Let's Plays Animes, in the description down below. Also, be sure to check out Air Twitch and the join button. But with that being said, this has been Josh from Cardfight Empire, and I'll see you guys on the next video, which is our Bang Dream Rosalia deck, which you guys should be getting today. Peace, guys.